Hey, what's up, guys? This is Elias. I just wanted to first start off by saying make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you like the video, and then also start off by thanking all the JB subscribers, all the people who've come over from JB and are hanging out watching my videos. That's a really cool connection. I enjoy hanging out with JB, enjoy teaching him Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so it's been a cool connection that a lot of his subscribers have came over and started watching my videos. So welcome, you guys. I hope you guys enjoy the things that you guys see. So we're going to talk today about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu belt system. So the adult belt system, to be exact. The adult belt system comes in, we have 5 different belts. There are some other belts that you get when you get like really deep into the years after you get your black belt. But we're going to talk about the five core belts, 5 main core belts, which is starts with white, goes from white to blue, from blue to purple, purple to brown, brown to black. And we're just going to kind of go over some of the things that I give you some summary of what I think each belt entails. It's not going to cover everything. I could be here for hours to talk to you about how like each belt, what lessons each belts give. I'm just kind of giving you a summary of some of the things that I think. So hope you enjoy it. So the first thing I'll talk about with the white belt is I think for white belt, that's where you really get to make mistakes. That's where you really get to just learn the fundamentals of Jiu-Jitsu, build the foundation of your Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and really not be judged whether you have really good Jiu-Jitsu to begin or have some good athleticism or whatever it may be, because everybody at white belt comes in like different shapes and sizes. And a lot of times at white belt, you'll see the same size that you see somebody at white belt when they come in, and you see them again like blue, purple, even brown, black will be completely different because they're going to lose weight or they're going to get stronger. They're going to, in some cases for kids that start at 16, which is in our adult system, they're going to get bigger. So it's where you get to just make all the mistakes. It's where you get to hang out and build the foundation. So keep that in mind. Keep that white belt is just something you're going to be able to build the foundation of your Jiu-Jitsu and make mistakes. And if you remember and keep that in mind, try not to think too much about winning or losing, because when you think too much about winning or losing at white belt, sometimes it stunts your growth. When you're training as a white belt and you don't want to make mistakes, or you like, especially if you come in with like great athleticism, a lot of times you'll tend to hold and like not want to move too much when you're in white belt, when you get a good position, just because you're like thinking to yourself, I got to this position, I don't want to lose this position. So, but just think about, if you can, trying to curve that mentality, because that's the time to make mistakes. That's the time to move when you're a white belt. So when you're trying to attack or do things like that as a white belt, just be loose. Don't worry about win or lose. Don't worry if you lose a position, if you try to attempt an armbar. You're going to start back over. You're going to practice a ton of more times at that belt. So that's, in my opinion, the main thing with white belts. Just be there to learn, enjoy the learning process, the beginning learning process of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Make mistakes. Don't think of the winning or losing. Just think of getting better on your way to your blue belt. The next thing I'll talk about is blue belt is when you usually start to develop a game. So like in Jiu-Jitsu, that's what we call something that you really refer back to a lot. Something like, as far as body structurally speaking, you start to understand at blue belt a little bit more the way your body's structured, the way your body moves. You're probably by this time learning, at least a year or well into a year of training Jiu-Jitsu, 2-3 years. And so you start to understand what it is that you like, what it is that your body adapts to better than maybe other things. And you start to veer towards that direction a little bit more often. And what we refer to in Jiu-Jitsu that as is a game, right? So that's, to me, the main thing you're going to discover in blue belt. It's the longest belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu until, of course, you get to your black belt. So it's going to be the belt that you're going to probably go through the most plateaus, and really just have to know that, it's something that everybody goes through, and it's a long belt. And just be patient with yourself and know that everyone goes through those plateaus. And if you can bust through those plateaus, it's going to be worth it as you continue going into all the next upper belts. So that's my thought on blue belts. So the next belt is purple belt. So purple belt is usually the belt that you start refining your game. It's where you start to like really just dig into the thing that you enjoy doing structurally, still learning other techniques. Actually, you never stop learning, but you're learning you're being more specific on the game that you're practicing. And another thing I think at purple, at least in my situation, is you start to practice more leg attacks. And when I say leg attacks, that means defensively and offensively, because you know that the next bout, which would be the brown belt, will be when you have to start being able to defend leg attacks or be able to attack leg attacks, depending on what jiu-jitsu tournaments you do. But most jiu-jitsu tournaments don't allow anything under brown belt to attack the legs unless it's a straight ankle lock. And so you don't have to worry about any submissions other than the straight ankle lock at white, blue, and purple, but you will start to have to worry about it at brown. So when you're purple belt, you start to think, like in my case, it was more like I have to start to learn how to defend more. So I think purple belt is refining all the things you learned at blue and just becoming tighter in your game, as well as starting to dabble a little bit into, you may have already at white and blue been shown different ways to attack the legs, but you don't use it as much because it doesn't apply to you as much as far as tournaments go. But at purple belt is when you really start to focus more on it because you know what's coming next. So let's move on to the next bout. So brown belt is something that I think, like, that's when foot attacks become real. That's when you really start to focus more on it, especially when you're on other brown or black belts. And it's also, I think, a belt that you start to think about, like, if this is something that you can make as a career. Like, regardless of what you do in life, when you start training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, in the beginning, it's like, it's a hobby, and it could stay a hobby all the way up to a black belt. But when you're a white and blue belt, it is a hobby because there's not really an urge for you to want to try to teach this martial art to other people. Not saying like when you're in class you don't help your fellow like white or blue belts, if you're higher belts than those, learn the technique, but you don't really think about like doing teaching as a living. When you hit the brown belt, I think that's when you start really thinking to yourself, like, regardless of what career you're in, like, hey, this is maybe something that I can do in the future, and it's something that I enjoy teaching other people, and it's something I might want to look into as far as opening my own academy or being a part as far as coaching goes at my current academy. And that can be different too. I believe, that's the majority. Like, not a lot of people make it to brown belt, believe it or not. I've talked about previous videos how blue being the new black. A lot of people stop at blue belt. So I would say, going back just quickly to purple belt, when you hit the purple belt, another thing that you're accomplishing, I believe, when you hit the purple belt is, statistically, you're now going to be a really high percentage of getting to your black belt. So brown belt, you're just really thinking, man, like, is this something that I can do for the future? And it's, as far as technically speaking, it's also, I think, when you start to really get super technical in your movements. And the reason I think that is because you're thinking about, next step is black belt. So I want to make sure that when I get to the black belt, that you almost start to feel like a sense of responsibility to say, okay, in the beginning bouts, like, I was good technically, but I was having fun. It was all fun and games. Cool. But now brown belt, like, it starts to get real. It's like, hey, the next bout is black. I have to really start to sharpen up all of my technical skills, because you have a responsibility at black belt, I believe, at least perceptually speaking, to just be super sharp. So when you're at brown, you start to really feel that, I guess you can say, weight on your shoulders, and you want to try to make sure that when you do get the black belt, you check all the boxes as far as technically speaking. So that's the main, I think that summarizes the best that I believe that, like, being a brown belt will consist of. So let's go on to the final bout. So now, final bout, black belt. So first, let me start off by saying, I think a lot of people, especially if you're beginning jiu-jitsu, think like, man, the goal is black belt. The goal, like, what, I can't wait till I get my black belt. You can't even, like, imagine what it's like to be a black belt. And let me tell you, when you get a black belt, the journey just begins. Like, black belt, like I talked about earlier, blue belt being the longest colored belt when you're coming up in the ranks. Black belt is literally like years before you get degrees, before you start to move up into red and black belt. And then from red and black belt, you go coral. And then there's all kinds of belts that are, in my opinion, more like lifetime achievement awards, because they take so long to get. But black belt, to me, is where I think you get tested the most, mentally and physically. Everybody wants a piece of you when you're a black belt. When you're a black belt, it doesn't, like, the journey, I mean, it doesn't get easier. Like, I think, if anything, the earlier belts are easier, because it's two things, right? One is that it's easier because you don't have to worry about like if somebody submits you who's a higher belt or a same belt, because you're just like, well, I'm a white belt, that person was a blue belt, he submitted me. Or and by the way, these things don't really matter, but our ego and pride are really strong things that we have to really consider when we train jiu-jitsu. So they don't really matter, but they do matter. So when you get to the black belt, it's when you have everybody that wants to test you. You have people that, you know, when you roll with a blue belt, they want to, and it may not be like to try to submit you or things like that, although it a lot of times is about that, but it's more like they use you as a gauge. They use you as like a way to, whether you're a professor, the head instructor at the academy, or you're just one of the teammates, they use you as a way to make themselves understand whether they're getting better or whatever the case. So you always get the best of someone when you're a black belt. Like when I was in lower belts, or when you're in lower belts, a lot of times when you roll and you're, you know, white, blue, purple, or brown, you may get the best of someone, but a lot of times you can flow. You can at black belt that changes a little bit. Not saying when you roll with other black belts that can't be the same, but when you roll with lower belts, you're like the standard now. You're the thing that everyone looks up to. So it's physically tough, because usually when you get to black belt, obviously you've put more years in, so you're a little older than you were when you started jiu-jitsu. So not only do you have this higher responsibility or this higher hierarchy in the eyes of the lower belts, but you're also older than you were when you started. So physically you might not be as, I mean, you know, I was lucky enough to get my black belt at a young age, but physically you still have a little bit more challenges than you would have had, say, you know, starting jiu-jitsu as a white belt at like 25. So it's and that can play on your mental. That can play, because mentally now you have to really you're like, when you get to the black belt, it's, for me, like, I believe the time that you're in a fight with your ego, because egotistically you're just like, man, I gotta be able to hold my own with these lower belts. And then that in return a lot of times makes you not want to roll with lower belts, because you think to yourself, man, like, you know, shoot, this guy's kind of tough. I don't want to roll with him, because if he rolls with me, you know, he might, you know, people might see that he does well against me or something like that. And like, you have to fight that, right? The mental part of it is like, you have to fight that. You gotta fight that thought process, because we're all, like, age is undefeated, right? So we all are going to get older regardless of what belt we are. And when we get older, things are going to deteriorate, physically speaking. And, you know, the thing that you have to stay strong is your mentality. Just knowing that when you're training, don't think of it as winning or losing. Just think of it as, I get to train jiu-jitsu regardless of your age. And so I think black puts a lot of pressure, in my opinion, on your physical and mental thought process, and it's the, in my opinion, the beginning of the journey. It's the thing that makes it's the belt that you, like, take the most damage onto your ego and pride on, and again, because it goes beyond that winning and losing mentality, and on top, I mean, we can do a whole nother video about competition, but in competition, black belt's a whole new world as well. So everything, when you get to black belt, like, it's almost like, I don't want to say it like this because this is impossible, but it's almost like starting over. It's like you get thrown into it. Like, it's like you went through this beginning of this world and you were like, man, I made it through. I made it to the white. I made it to the blue. I made it to the purple. I made it to the brown. Like, yes, I'm in the black belt, like, club. But it's like, oh, shoot. Now I'm in like a whole different club. This is like, everything's tougher here. Like not just, you know, it's not as carefree. And again, that's an ego thing speaking, because it should still be as carefree. And for me, I try to always still make it carefree, regardless of any of the physical or mental aspects of it. So that's my thought on all the different belts, and giving you a little bit of thought of what each belt consists of, and hope you enjoy the way I described it. If not, or even if so, or if not, or if you have different ideas, I would be interested in hearing for any, especially if you guys are higher belts, but maybe who was in like the white belt stage, the blue belt, purple, brown, or of course the black belts, in the comments, what like you're going through. All the comments I read, man. So those are cool comments to hear, like different people's ideas of what their thoughts or their perceptions are. So anyway, that's it, man. Just wanted to share this video, drop this video. Remember to subscribe, remember to like, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Talk to you soon.